Hello everyone, we're Frog and Crow. My name's Tom.
I'm Matt.
And we're making a quick video today with the launch of 10th edition in Leviathan to just go through some questions that we've had about our events as tournament organisers, or TOs, and the decisions that we've had to make along the way. So what we've done is we've broken up these questions into three categories. The first one being what impact this has had on us as event organisers and the decisions that we've had to make behind the scenes.
The second one is about 10th edition rule questions in general and our impression of it compared to 9th.
Absolutely. And then we're finally going to end on some discussion about our own hobby that we've been asked about, how it's going to impact our ideas and our view on the lore and things as 10th Ed moves forward. So with no further ado, we'll get on to that first category, which is looking at how us as TOs have been affected.
Well, the first question is quite a simple one, isn't it? We've been asked a few times now if we'll be using the 10th edition rules at the Dakka Rally, which is in July on the 29th and 30th, which is just over a month after the release of 10th Ed. So the easy answer is yes.
Yes, we will. You know, plenty of time for people to get their collections ready, write their army lists, and be ready to roll for their first 10th Ed event.
So the second question we've been given is, does the index relaunch and the overall balance reset present any challenges to how you build your event packs?
Absolutely. It's been a bit of a process. There's a lot of things we have to consider when we do these kind of events. We want to make sure that our events are as enjoyable as possible for the people that are going to attend them. Now, don't get me wrong, I've really enjoyed all the previews and everything that's come from J Games Workshop over 10th, but with only having various small bits of information to go through, with no real context to what these pieces of information mean, it's been a bit of a nightmare at times, hasn't it, to make these decisions?
Yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of people are coming up with reactions to 10th edition. I don't feel like we've seen it long enough yet to make any real major choices. So I feel like it's best to just run it by the book, get everyone the best chance they can to just get situated with the rules in 1 month they've got, and then have a fun weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. To carry on from this point, we've seen from other publishers about the decisions that they've made. Okay, so another question is, do we think it's too early to make these decisions? As Matt's already touched on in our previous question, we do. You know, these things are not going to be perfect straight off the bat. There are going to be teething issues, especially with index releases.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, our plan, we're just going to stick to the book, make it welcoming for everyone so they don't have to learn anything new on top of a new edition. And see how it goes. And then we can make more decisions as we become more informed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen some strong reactions from certain TOs in other places, banning outright factions. Yeah. Completely. Yeah. And the thing to remember about this is that it's an index. So codexes are coming down the line. You know, there's going to be more details for the armies. For right now, as we saw with the 9th edition indexes, things aren't going to be perfect, but everyone's pretty much at the same baseline. And we just have to see things in action before we can tell what's actually broken, if anything is truly broken.
Yeah, true.
So the next question we've got was, you run a good variety of events that aren't super competitively focused. Have you considered running a narrative event, and if so, what would we do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We've been running events now for 6 years.
I think so. 7 now, actually.
7. Okay, 7 years. And we are yet to do anything like a campaign weekend or a narrative focused thing. We have got some horrifically ambitious ideas. We've just got to figure out the practicalities of those. Campaign weekends are something that I really enjoy. We're about to start our own Crusade campaign, which we'll be taking notes on and possibly recording some bits for to look forward to. And as we go with that, we'll be able to learn what we can actually pump into our events.
I mean, if we wanted to talk about our absolute dream narrative, it would include Kill Team, Aeronautica Imperialis, 40k, possibly Apocalypse as well, to culminate the weekend.
Yeah, get all those different layers of a conflict involved, that with each one impacting the next.
Yeah, that would be our dream narrative. It would include all the different game types.
Yeah, whether we can actually make a formula for that to work as a attended event is another question. A lot of moving parts there, but you know, we will see what the future holds for us.
Yeah, indeed.
So, as the tournament organisers of Frog and Crow events, how do you see your events as different from other tournaments? So,
well, I think the main thing that we strive for with our events is we try to make them as inclusive as possible, like we've already mentioned. We try not to change rules too much so that everyone more or less knows what they're coming into without having to be deeply invested in the tournament scene. As we all know, I think we know that tournament scene tends to mess with rules a little bit.
Yep.
In an attempt to write out perceived broken rules and things that aren't doing well in the meta of the game.
Yeah.
But we're not strictly a tournament focused organizer.
No.
So we don't necessarily strive to follow everything that happens in the tournament world.
Yeah, well,
so that's our main thing.
Absolutely. I mean, to reiterate on a point I made previously, anybody should be able to come to our events and have a good time. If you're not the most competitive player, that's fine. Come and throw some dice, have some fun. We just want to create that more relaxed environment. You know, the beer and pretzels Warhammer that a lot of people enjoy around the kitchen table, but on a larger scale. It's pretty much what we want to recreate.
Yeah.
I mean, additionally to this, at the Dakka in July, we've got all sorts of extra things going on. I'm going to be running hobby demonstrations throughout the weekend with some focuses using new ranges of paints to help people who want to take their hobby from maybe a starting point or a basic level and just add a little bit extra to it. You know, showing people how I do things like with my Storm Crows and give them that demo. And we're going to have videography, photography going on.
Yeah.
And it's going to have a bit more of a sort of festival feel, possibly, than a tournament feel.
We've got the tournament bingo as well. So we're going to try and spice up the games a little bit. Just give people things to do that are more fun and not necessarily strictly tournament focused play.
Absolutely. Just quickly expand on the tournament bingo.
The serious tournament players can play serious tournament play, of course.
Absolutely. But that's not for everyone. So like the tournament bingo is to give people the opportunity to enjoy their games. There will be little tasks, you know, for them to complete during their games, like character on character duels, things like this, aiming for the biggest monsters, etc. And we've got a couple of little rewards planned for those people that manage to fill out the card and get a bingo, as it were.
Yeah. So our next question is, what's our favourite rules change from 9th edition, moving away from the tournament organising questions and more towards our opinion on 10th edition as a whole?
Yeah.
What is your favourite rules change? We've played a couple of games now.
We have. We've had a good... I am thoroughly enjoying that tactical objectives are back in the game. It was one of my favourite bits from the previous editions. The fact that the missions ebb and flow and can change means that armies are no longer really how I felt during 9th edition, aiming to control 2 or 3 objectives and dominate half the board.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot more movement involved. There's a lot more quick decision making involved.
Well, like you say, if you play the tactical missions, a lot of them require a lot of movement.
Yes, they do.
You've got to get around the board. You've got to hold different board quarters. You've got to hold the middle of the board. You've got to hold your opponent's deployment zone.
Yep.
Got to get into the corners of the board for some of them. They really reward that tactical flexibility.
Like you say, the tactical flexibility there.
But people can play the fixed missions if they want to.
They absolutely
play
can.
like 9th edition.
They absolutely can. Yeah.
So I do like the increased tactical flexibility. I like the fact that it significantly rewards people building army lists that don't just necessarily focus on killing your opponent.
Yeah, that single mechanic idea. I mean, other than that, though, I'm not going to lie. I absolutely love the way vehicles and monsters are now because they actually feel like them.
Yeah, with the expansion in the toughness and the expansion in the strength of weaponry.
Yeah,
they've really expanded just how far apart your average infantryman is from a tank.
Absolutely, there's a huge toolbox that they've now got to play with to really make things feel unique and to actually create those specialist roles.
You have to bring anti-tank weaponry to deal with your opponent's tanks. But on the flip side, the anti-tank weaponry does almost nothing to any infantry on the board.
Yeah.
So you need to bring everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You can't just go, all tank lists aren't the perfect solution anymore.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So that's probably my favourite change. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. So our 3 highlights for the new edition. And is there anything that we can foresee causing a few problems in the future?
Oof,
I mean, we'll start with the problems because I'd rather end on a high.
Fair enough.
Problems
in the new edition. There's a lot of rules for people to learn now.
Yeah, huge different change to the way everything works.
Everything layers together.
Yeah.
It's not simplified.
Yeah, well, it's like they've been saying throughout the whole launch. It's simplified but not simple.
That's right, yeah. Simplified but not simple. That was the phrase I was trying to remember.
Cool. So there's a lot of things that people are going to have to learn. So as tournament organisers, the Dakka rallies, things like game timings. You know, we give 3 hours per round, so we're expecting to see maybe some slower games that maybe only make it to turn 4 possibly, and that's something we're going to have to adapt with. And I think with it being an index launch rather than codex launches, there are going to be teething issues, as we've previously touched on. There are going to be things to look out for, and without more nuance into what these problems are and how they're going to impact the game, there's not a lot we can do about it.
On the flip side, I think some of the initial problems that people were predicting, like the problem with the damage -1, have been cleared up already.
Well,
so Games Workshop is reacting very quickly to these questions that are coming up. The Death Watch stratagem was quickly changed.
Gutted I can't take advantage of that.
But I think it does show good things. It does show good things from Games Workshop in reacting quickly to these rules questions.
I mean, like,
so that's one of my highlights of the edition is they're already updating the rules and bringing things into line. I believe the towering rule was slightly changed in the wording. As well.
Nice and quick.
Yeah.
I mean, we go back an edition or 2 or 3. You know, I mean, when I first started, when your codex and your rules dropped, that was it until the next edition or codex.
For years.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even with 9th edition, we were getting, what was it, quarterly or every 4th month we were getting a new update.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and a new chapter improvement.
3 or 4 times a year, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a massive improvement, but it still left these huge areas of space for people who are playing regularly to sort of figure out those teething issues and have problems. So the fact that they're on it.
Yeah, they're absolutely on top of it. I don't know if that counts as a top 3 highlight, but it's definitely one of my favourite parts of the the current GW. Yeah. The paradigm. I'm struggling to come up with a real top 3 highlights.
Top 3 highlights. I mean, we've already spoken about things like tanks and tactical objectives.
Yeah, I just love the synergizing that happens in all the armies.
That's actually one of my top 3 highlights. Like the way characters interact with units and leaders.
Yeah.
You know, no longer can people throw a load of buffs onto a single unit and use it to just go through the game and mulch people. You know, you've got to be very careful with how you place those characters and what those characters can actually do after that. You know, the whole way bodyguard works.
The change to auras.
Yeah.
That are now more unit focused. So
absolutely.
The Death Star is something a thing of the past. Maybe not entirely, but somewhat a thing of the past now. Yeah,
I'd agree with that. Absolutely.
That's definitely another highlight.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes. Plus challenges, character and character fights and units.
Epic challenge.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's always a fun thing.
Cool.
But we're big into the narrative aspect. So.
Yeah, we like that. We like a good boss fight.
Yeah. Yeah, even in 9th edition, our warlords would regularly end up charging each other on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether it's a good idea or not.
So now we're starting to look at our personal feelings on our own hobby with a few questions of that. So has 10th changed how we are going to be planning out army projects?
For me personally, it changed immediately on the release of the data sheets.
Yeah,
I immediately, and when the points came out, it was even more so reinforced. I got a strong impression that I wanted to just get units I liked the look of, build them and paint them and enjoy the hobby aspect, which I've never truly enjoyed just the painting aspect. But now I'm more focused on that because I don't have to worry about any of the loadouts.
Yeah.
I can take a kit off the shelf, build it however I like the look of the stuff inside the kit, and it'll be legal to play.
Yeah. And have a purpose.
And most likely be useful on the board. Yeah, I haven't seen any units that are completely worthless.
Yep.
Everything seems to have something to do. So I just like the idea of just having a big collection on the shelf because like we've got our studio, we've got big collections just on shelves. You can just go up to your shelf, pluck off the stuff you want to play with, count up the points, add a couple of things to round out the 2,000 points to play a game. So that's how it's changed it for me.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had horrendously large collections.
Yeah.
And
you have.
For me, just having the chance to take some of my favourite units from 9th edition that I was using, throw them on a board, but then actually look at what's left over in the cabinet. Like a big one when the Gladiators launched. The Lancer was my favourite looking tank. I liked one big main battle cannon, and that was me. I'm a happy bunny.
We're a little bit historical buffs in that. We like things that look like real life tanks.
Yeah. You know, so being able to get my Lancers out again and throw them in and just have some fun, seeing what they do. Yeah. And turns out they're great. And I absolutely love it.
The thing about the abilities is that they've made every unit have a role.
Yeah.
The Lancers are really good at what they do, which is tank killing.
Yeah, I mean, we had a talk just about this morning about when it comes to looking at units. I'm finding myself drawn less towards their stat lines of the model and the weapons, and more towards those unit abilities.
Yeah.
And how is that going to be a force multiplier within the army that I want to run?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything has a role now.
Yeah, so it means that when I'm looking at the new stuff, I just want to try it all.
Yeah.
You know,
Want to give everything a spin.
some Stormgrowth Stern Guard, some Terminators, you know, give it all a go.
Yeah, we wouldn't have even dreamed about Stormcrow Terminators in 9th edition.
Yeah, but now... Yes.
I would have never dreamed of putting any Phobos into Kuakali.
No.
But now I'm considering it.
Yeah.
And I've definitely got some vehicles going into that as well. Yeah. So it's definitely expanded what I would consider in my hobby.
Yeah.
So that absolutely is how it's changed it for me.
Yeah.
So, do we think Flyers will still be non-competitive or will they make a comeback?
Yeah.
Well, we don't use a lot of Flyers, do we?
We
between
don't.
us?
I have done previously.
I have in the past as well had Flyers.
Yeah, this question came with the context in particular of Corvus Black Stars.
Right.
From somebody I know who is a Deathwatch player, knowing
Right.
that I'm a Deathwatch player,
Yep.
who used to run 3 of them in a list.
You had 3 of them. I remember in 8th
Yeah.
edition, and you ran them against my Death Guard that were brand new to 8th edition,
Yeah.
and you were very upset when they ran forward and just bounced off.
We don't talk about that.
I talk about it as much as I can.
Yes, I know. So will Flyers be making a comeback?
Honestly, I don't think they're going to make a competitive comeback. I think they can be used. They're completely
Absolutely.
usable.
They've got a role.
Yeah.
But having had a look at a few of them, they seem to be in this weird sort of middle ground. Lots of them are trying to do many different roles at once and aren't mastering any.
I feel that's a problem for a lot of units in Games Workshop. I feel like a lot of vehicles tend to be transports and tanks.
Yeah.
And Flyers especially tend to be transports and a gunship or something like that.
Yeah.
Or they have a very specific anti-flyer role. And taking a flyer to deal with flyers is kind of a dead end competitively. Because as long as nobody brings a flyer, you don't need a flyer.
Well, that's it. You can't predict what your opponent's going to bring with you. I do think there's definitely a role for the transport. So things like the Corvus Black Star definitely play a role, being able to zoom across the board and drop a unit out where you need it when you need it. Same with the Storm Ravens, same with things like Valkyries.
They provide a toolbox of options. If you don't have Deep Strike available and you don't want to do strategic reserves just the old-fashioned way, coming off the side of the board, But I feel like the points tax is a little high for the guns that they bring.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Which is why I don't think they'll be competitive. And they can't hold objectives.
No, not unless they're in hover.
That's turned out to be very important in the games of 10th we've played so far.
Absolutely. Like we were saying before, movement is key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Movement is absolutely key. And if something can't get around the board and hold something, then that's a problem.
Well, aircraft can get around the board. They just can't hold anything when they get there.
Yeah.
But maybe you can do the scanning actions that are in 10th edition. Actions are gone, but there are pseudo actions on some of the missions. They could do those. So I suppose, maybe. I guess my answer is the very unhelpful maybe. Maybe we'll see some flyers competitively.
Yeah, there's arguments for both. Right. We're going on to moving away from rules and tournaments and going into lore here. Yeah. So how do we see the story arc of Warhammer 40,000 progressing?
It's a big question.
Is there any model or army that I wish I still had? No. And the question's vanished off my screen.
The question is, how do we see the story arc of 40k progressing?
Yeah, we'll start with that bit then. Okay.
This is one of my big problems with GW. I'm gonna soapbox a little bit here. My problem with GW is the lore is only ever used in support of the model releases. So you see a big lore release when you see a big model release. When Gulliman came out, there was a big lore release.
There was.
You know, when the Death Guard came out, there was a lore release. New model release, new lore release. When the Lion model came out, there was a big lore release along with it.
Yeah.
But you don't ever really see, as far as I can tell, you never really see a lore release without a model release.
Yeah.
And it makes it feel to me like the lore is a little stagnant. Because how long has it been since the launch of 9th Ed in the lore now? A couple of 100 years?
Yeah.
And I don't feel like much has happened in that time. Abaddon launched a crusade.
Yeah.
And divided the entire galaxy in half.
Yep.
And we've not heard anything from the Chaos faction since.
A bit on Vigilus.
A little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you see, I was reminiscing about 7th edition, was it, on the way here, where you used to have these big campaign releases, without necessarily model things. Don't get me wrong, there were issues with these, like those people who remember detachments and all the problems that they had. But you would get these series of books, like Montcar and Carry On, and they would just be about the story, and they'd have some really quite big impacts. I mean, just in those two that I've mentioned, I mean, the chapter master of the Raven Guard died, and Shrike took his place, and it's a big deal in that regard, to some players. And I just don't feel we've had that same sort of oomph.
I feel I mean, we can maybe blame COVID for a little bit of the hiccups.
Possibly.
Releases were delayed during 2019 and 2020.
Yeah.
Apparently there was a lot of printing problems with getting shipping from China. So possibly that contributed to it. But it does feel a little stagnant to me. I just wish GW would do lore releases that didn't necessarily have to come with a model release.
Yeah.
And I do wish they'd catch up with the model releases for some of the factions that have got 25-plus-year-old sculpts still going in them. Whereas the Space Marines have seen 3 new model releases in the same time period since 8th.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think where I'd like to see the lore go, though, is I would love to see the Xenos get a little bit more of a focus. We've had Leviathan coming in now. Yeah. And I'm very keen to learn not only how this is affecting Imperial Sanctus, but how it's affecting the Eldar, how it's affecting the Tau, how it's affecting the Necrons, and sort of really bring these players back to the board. I mean, there's a lot of attention on the poster boys, the Space Marines, the wider Imperium, but these other factions, which are just as important, tend to get left by the wayside.
So the lore, they're extremely important because you can't have an interesting lore with just Space Marines in it. Yeah. That would be very boring.
Absolutely.
We need the Tyranids, and we need, Chaos Space Marines and demons, and even if they're just boogeymen. Yep. Preferably they wouldn't just be boogeymen. No. But it does seem to be how GW treats them a little bit. Every release has a Space Marine release, but not every release has a Tyranid release. No. Which is a shame.
And I believe there was another half to that question asking about Primarchs.
Is that what it was?
I believe so.
About which Primarch we wanted to see come back.
Yeah, with the potential for Fulgrim to be coming back in the near future after Angron's just turned up.
That is the rumour, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the Lion, we've got Guilliman. So
do we think that rumour's true, or do we think we'll get an Imperial one first?
Well, we've just had a new.
We just had an Imperial one, but
Angron,
we've just had an Imperial. That's true. Angron came just before.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of loyalist Primarchs, my honest answer is I don't want to see any of them back. It sounds a bit lame, but
that's where we are, though. We tend to not play with named characters.
We tend not to play with named characters, nor focus on them. But I think particularly in the lore, one of the things I do like about being an Imperial player sometimes is you feel like the underdog. There are these huge godlike beings like Angron and Mortarion and Magnus, romping around, and you've got, or we've had recently, Guilliman doing his best to sort of curb the worst of it. And now we've got the Lion back. I won't lie, I was a little bit gutted that they got along so well when they came back. I was hoping for a bit more friction.
Well, they historically didn't get along so well, did they?
In which is the Heresy book?
I couldn't tell you.
Unremembered Empire.
Right.
For those people that have read it, the Lion was not a fan of what Guilliman had done in that secondary Imperium that they'd made up. Right. And it would have been nice to see these tensions sort of bubble through a little bit. And what I really want is an excuse to pit my Space Marine army against my mate's Space Marine army and have a game that I can slot into a narrative in my head nice and easily.
I remember you saying the same thing. You wanted to have a little bit of an internal dissent between the Space Marine factions.
I don't want my Marines to be battling other Marines and having a paintball game.
Having Space Marine factions on two sides of the same side, effectively, would make it for interesting lore, I think. Yeah. So that would be cool.
No, absolutely.
Maybe with Russ.
Possibly get that headbanger back in.
The Space Wolves have always been a bit off to one side, haven't they? Yeah. Maybe there. Maybe Russ. Maybe Russ is the Primarch we want, if we had to name one.
If we had to. Yeah.
Although, I'd like Vulcan.
Cool.
So, what are your biggest regrets on your hobby journey? And is there a model or army you wish you still had, or that you've missed out on?
Yes. I have a number of hobby regrets.
Easy one for both of us to say yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've sold recently a few of my forces.
Yeah,
as you know, I sold my Death Watch, I've sold my Custodes, I've sold all sorts. But the two that I regret now are my Death Watch and my Custodes.
Really?
Yeah, I know Custodes aren't your flavour.
Absolutely not. I hate the fact that they exist in the 40k game.
Yeah,
they should just be the Emperor's bodyguards.
Yeah, I did thoroughly enjoy playing with them though. They were a good fun army to get through. Models that I wish I had and that I maybe missed out of, not 40k related at all.
Right.
But going back to the old world is Archaeon on foot.
The old world.
The unmounted version. That'd be the big model. If I could have any model on my desk right now, that would be the one.
I mean, we're both secretly quite large fans of the old world and the old fantasy battle models.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not necessarily fantasy battle itself, but the models and the world and the setting we're both quite big fans of. So I guess for me it would be also an old world. I think it would be a Bretonnian army. I would have had I would have indulged a Bretonnian army, but I never got around to it, and then the old world disappeared.
Yeah, but the old world is coming back.
It is coming back, so maybe I've got another chance. And they have released actually a teaser of some Bretonnian stuff, so maybe I've got my chance.
I had an old Bretonnian army that I had a great time.
All the knights comparisoned in all the bright colours, it just it tickles a certain fantasy medieval bone. Yeah, so that'd be mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So I think that's the end.
I think that's our last question. Yeah,
that is our last question. So I'll just take a second to thank everyone that's still listening to us. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for watching through us natter on
and waffle. The Dakka Rally is taking part on the 29th and 30th of July
at Element Games.
As are the hobby sessions on the same weekend, with all the stuff that we've mentioned going on.
10 hours of tuition with Tom here.
Yep, and 5 games of 40k going on throughout the weekend as well. If any of you are interested in coming in, tickets can be found at the Element Games web store, and you'll be able to purchase them through there. And we will hopefully see you there.
And of course, the other people we need to thank is Velocity Media for setting up all this recording for us, because this is way beyond our capabilities. Absolutely way beyond. Yeah, we'd be on a tablecloth and a GoPro, and that'd be about it. Yeah. Instead we get all this fancy kit. Indeed. And they will also be there on the Dakka as well, offering photos, videos. Yeah. And all sorts of stuff as well. Yeah, there'll be, if you want to get some nice pictures of your army, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be getting some on the day. I am. Yes, I am. Yeah. So we will see you there. I hope you all enjoy the new launch of 10th Ed with your Leviathan boxes. And get rolling some dice. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.